Standing before the mahogany doors of my family's Victorian mansion, I clutched Grandma Rose's final letter in my coat pocket like a shield. The Christmas wreaths and twinkling lights seemed to mock the heaviness in my heart. This would be our first Christmas without her, and only I knew the bombshell that was about to drop. I'm Katherine Mitchell, though my family barely acknowledges my existence beyond calling me Kate when they need something. At 32, I'm the middle child caught between my older sister Elizabeth, the successful corporate lawyer, and my younger brother Michael, the genius surgeon. Meanwhile, I chose to become a conservationist working to protect endangered species. A career path that my family deemed worthless, just like me. The door swung open before I could knock. "You're late," my mother said sharply, her critical eyes scanning my outfit. I'd worn a simple green dress, expensive but understated, bought with my own money. Not that she'd notice or care. "Merry Christmas to you too, Mom," I replied, stepping into the warmth of the house. The familiar scent of pine and cinnamon did nothing to ease the tension in my shoulders. The living room was a picture of holiday perfection, just like everything else in my mother's carefully curated world. A 12-foot Christmas tree dominated one corner, its ornaments arranged with military precision. Family photos lined the mantelpiece, mostly of Elizabeth and Michael. The few that included me were old, from before I'd disappointed them by choosing my own path. "Katie, darling." Elizabeth's voice carried across the room, dripping with false sweetness. She air-kissed my cheek, careful not to smudge her perfect makeup. "Still working with those animals?" "Conservation research, yes," I corrected her, though I knew it was pointless. "We're making significant progress in." "That's nice," she cut me off, already turning away. "Mom, when are we opening presents? I can't wait to show everyone what Charles bought me." She flashed her enormous diamond ring, a reminder that she'd married into old money. Michael was sprawled on the leather sofa, barely looking up from his phone. "Hey," he mumbled, his standard greeting for me these days. My father sat in his usual armchair, hidden behind a newspaper, probably avoiding any real interaction until dinner. "Katherine." The familiar voice made me turn. Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, stood by the fireplace, swirling a glass of wine. "I heard about your little project getting rejected for funding again. Such a shame." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She'd never forgiven me for being Grandma Rose's favorite. I bit back a retort. She had no idea that my little project had actually secured major international backing. Not that any of them had bothered to ask. "Dinner's ready." Mom's voice rang out from the dining room. "Everyone take your assigned seats." Of course there were assigned seats. Heaven forbid we disrupt her perfect seating arrangement. I found my place card at the far end of the table, as far from the family conversation as possible without actually being in another room. Elizabeth sat at my mother's right hand, her place of honor. She was already launching into a story about her latest court victory, though I noticed she left out the part about how her husband's connections had landed her the case. "That's what real success looks like," Mom beamed. "Not like some people who waste their time chasing pointless dreams." I felt the familiar sting of her words but kept my face neutral as I cut into my turkey. The letter in my pocket seemed to burn against my leg. "Did you hear about Michael's promotion?" Dad finally emerged from behind his newspaper. "Youngest chief resident in the hospital's history." "Actually," Michael smirked, "they're making me department head next month." More praise erupted around the table. I pushed my peas around my plate, remembering all the times they'd dismissed my achievements. The international awards, the research breakthroughs, the conservation policies I'd helped implement, none of it mattered because it wasn't their definition of success. "What about you, Kate?" Aunt Patricia's voice cut through the celebration. "Any news worth sharing? Found a real job yet?" Before I could answer, Elizabeth jumped in. "Oh, leave her alone, Aunt Pat. We all know Katie's not exactly career-oriented. At least she's not asking for money anymore." My hand tightened around my fork. They had no idea that I'd been quietly building my own success, managing the foundation Grandma Rose had entrusted to me. The same foundation that controlled most of their trust funds. "Actually, my research was just featured in." "A disappointment," Mom interrupted, setting down her wine glass with more force than necessary. "That's what you are, Katherine. A complete disappointment to this family." The table fell silent. Even Elizabeth looked uncomfortable. Do you know what people say about us? Mom continued, her voice rising. They ask why we let you waste your life playing with animals when you could have been something. Anything. Margaret, Dad warned, but she was on a roll. Look at your siblings. Elizabeth's making partner at her firm. Michael's revolutionizing surgical techniques. And you're nothing. Worthless. Michael snickered. Elizabeth tried to hide her smile behind her napkin. I sat there letting their laughter wash over me. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that Grandma Rose had seen through their materialism and cruelty years ago. Nothing to say for yourself? Aunt Patricia pressed, enjoying my apparent humiliation. I told Rose she was making a mistake, encouraging your ridiculous dreams. That was it. The final straw. I reached into my pocket and pulled out Grandma Rose's letter. The official seal of her law firm was still intact. Actually, I said, my voice steady, Grandma Rose left me a letter to read to all of you today. She was very specific about the timing. What are you talking about? Mom snapped. The will was read months ago. This isn't about the will, I replied, breaking the seal. This is about the Mitchell Family Foundation. The one that controls all of your trust funds. The color drained from Elizabeth's face. Even Michael put down his phone. What about the foundation? Dad asked, suddenly alert. I unfolded the letter, Grandma Rose's elegant handwriting clear and bold. To my family, I began reading, if you're hearing this letter it means two things. First, that I'm no longer with you. And second, that you've failed the test I set for you. Test. Elizabeth interrupted. What test? I continued reading. I've watched for years as you've valued money and status over kindness and integrity. I've seen how you've treated my beloved Katherine, mocking her passion and dedication while praising shallow achievements and purchased success. Mom tried to speak, but I held up my hand, still reading. And so, I made a choice. 6 months ago, I appointed Katherine as the sole trustee of the Mitchell Family Foundation. She alone has the power to manage, distribute, or terminate all associated trust funds. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked up from the letter to see 6 shocked faces staring back at me. You're lying, Elizabeth whispered. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Would you like to see the foundation's accounts? Or perhaps the trust fund balances I now control? This is ridiculous. Mom stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Patricia, did you know about this? Aunt Patricia had gone very pale, no doubt remembering all the times she'd belittled me in front of Grandma Rose. She chose me, I said quietly, because I was the only one who understood that money doesn't equal worth. The only one who chose to make my own way instead of living off the family fortune. But what does this mean? Michael stammered. I stood up, carefully refolding Grandma's letter. It means, dear brother, that your comfortable trust fund lifestyle is now in my hands. All of your trust funds. Every last penny. The chaos that erupted after my announcement was exactly what you'd expect from people who just discovered their golden parachutes had holes in them. Elizabeth recovered first, her lawyer instincts kicking in. This can't be legal, she declared, pulling out her phone. I'm calling Charles's firm right now. Go ahead, I said calmly, taking a sip of water. The documents were ironclad. Grandma Rose made sure of that. You can't do this to us, Michael's voice cracked. I have payments. Commitments. Like that Ferrari you bought last month? I raised an eyebrow. Or the beach house you can't afford. Mom gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Katherine and Mitchell, if you think for one moment that we'll let you destroy this family. Destroy the family? I cut her off with a bitter laugh. You mean like you've been trying to destroy me for the past decade? Every criticism, every dismissal, every time you called my work worthless. That was different, she protested weakly. Yes, it was. Because I never needed your money. I built my own career, earned my own success. But you. I gestured around the table. Look at yourselves. What have any of you actually achieved without Grandma's money smoothing the way? Elizabeth's face flushed red. I worked hard for everything Really? I interrupted. Did you work hard for the job at Charles's father's firm? The one you got right after the wedding? Or how about that partnership track they mysteriously fast-tracked you for? She fell silent and I turned to Michael. And you, brother dear? Shall we talk about how many strings Grandma pulled to get you into medical school after you failed the MCT twice? You vindictive little, Aunt Patricia started, but Dad held up his hand. Katherine, he said, his voice surprisingly calm. Let's discuss this rationally. What do you want? Finally, someone asked the right question. I pulled out another envelope from my pocket. Grandma Rose left instructions about that too. She called it the redemption clause. Of course she did, Elizabeth muttered. The trust funds will remain frozen, I announced, until each of you completes 3 conditions. Conditions? Mom's voice was sharp. We're your family, not your employees. First condition, I continued as if she hadn't spoken. Each of you will volunteer 100 hours at the conservation center where I work. No exceptions, no buying your way out of it. Manual labor? Elizabeth looked horrified. I'm a lawyer, I don't. Second condition, I spoke over her. You will each write a detailed letter of apology. Not to me but to Grandma Rose's memory. Explaining how you corrupted everything she valued about our family legacy. Michael snorted. This is ridiculous. And third, I met each of their eyes in turn, you will donate 20% of your trust fund to charitable causes of my choosing permanently. The uproar was immediate. Everyone started shouting at once, their voices overlapping in a symphony of entitlement and outrage. Enough. Dad's voice cut through the chaos. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. You're serious about this? Completely. I pulled up the Foundation's management app on my phone. In fact, I've already frozen all the accounts. Check your banking apps if you don't believe me. The sound of frantic phone tapping filled the room, followed by a series of gasps and curses. I can't access anything, Elizabeth whispered, her face pale. My credit cards are declining, Michael added, panic creeping into his voice. Mom sank into her chair, looking suddenly older. How could you do this to us? The same way you've been doing it to me for years, I replied quietly. The difference is I'm giving you a chance to earn it back. More than you ever gave me. And if we refuse? Aunt Patricia demanded. I shrugged. Then the money goes to environmental conservation projects. Grandma Rose already approved the list. Elizabeth's legal mind was clearly racing. This is coercion. We could challenge. You could try, I agreed. But consider this. Every penny you spend fighting me legally comes from your own pockets now. Not the trust funds. How long can you maintain your lifestyles without access to Grandma's money? That shut them up. They all knew the truth. Their prestigious careers and expensive tastes were built on the foundation of those trust funds. Dad cleared his throat. When do we start? The volunteer work? I smiled. Your first shift is tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. sharp. We're rehabilitating injured sea turtles. On Boxing Day? Elizabeth looked aghast. Nature doesn't take holidays, sister dear. Neither does redemption. As the reality of their situation sank in, I saw something I'd never seen before in my family: humility. It looked foreign on their faces, like a dress that didn't quite fit. I have one more surprise, I said, reaching for my bag. Grandma Rose left each of you a personal letter. You can read them after you complete your first volunteer shift. I placed 5 sealed envelopes on the table. My family stared at them like they might explode. Merry Christmas, I stood up, smoothing my dress. I'll see you all bright and early tomorrow. Wear clothes you don't mind getting dirty. Wait, Mom called as I reached the door. You've had control of the foundation for months. Why wait until now to tell us? I turned back, thinking of all the family dinners I'd sat through since Grandma's death, listening to their continued jabs and jokes at my expense. Because, I said softly, I wanted to give you a chance to prove Grandma wrong. To show that you could be kind without being forced, that you could respect me without financial motivation. I paused. You failed. As I drove home that night, my phone buzzed continuously with messages from my family. Threats, pleading, attempts at negotiation. I ignored them all. The next morning, I arrived at the conservation center early to find them all waiting in the parking lot. Elizabeth in designer workout that would be ruined within hours. Michael in loafers entirely unsuitable for marine rescue work. Mom and Dad in matching casual that probably cost more than our monthly operating budget. Before we start, I announced, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about punishment. It's about understanding. Understanding what? Michael grumbled. That true worth isn't measured in dollars or status. It's measured in impact, in the difference you make in the world. I handed each of them a set of waders. Grandma Rose taught me that. Now it's your turn to learn. Over the next few months, something remarkable happened. Slowly, reluctantly at first, my family began to change. Elizabeth discovered she had a talent for rehabilitating injured birds. Michael's surgical precision proved invaluable in delicate rescue operations. Even Mom found purpose in organizing our community outreach programs. Their letters to Grandma Rose, when they finally wrote them, were surprisingly sincere. Dad's made me cry. 1 year later, we gathered again for Christmas dinner. The seating arrangement was gone. The conversation focused on achievements that had nothing to do with money or status. Elizabeth was doing pro bono work for environmental causes. Michael had started a program providing free surgeries for rescue animals. As I watched them interact, genuinely and warmly, I pulled out Grandma Rose's final letter to me, the one I'd never shared with them. My dearest Katherine, it read, money doesn't build character, it reveals it. Your family's wealth became their weakness, but your perceived lack of it became your strength. I'm trusting you with their redemption because you understand what they never did. That true worth lies not in what you have but in what you give. Love, Grandma. I looked up at my transformed family and smiled. Sometimes the most valuable trust fund isn't the one that fills your bank account, but the one that fills your heart with purpose. The trust funds. I unfroze them eventually, but by then something interesting had happened. My family didn't care about them as much anymore. They'd found something more valuable than money. They'd found themselves. Me. I kept managing the foundation, but with a new twist. Every major decision now required unanimous family approval. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. After all, as Grandma Rose would say, the true measure of wealth isn't in controlling it, but in sharing it wisely. That Christmas dinner became our new normal. No more assigned seats, no more competition, no more measuring worth in dollars and cents. Just family, finally understanding what Grandma Rose had known all along. That sometimes, losing a fortune is the only way to find your true worth.